guys, well I'm going to make a short little video tonight for some modifications to the FPV planes that I have on my website. And these modifications are going to make the planes fly a little better and also make them more durable. So the first one I'm going to cover is the first version of the FPV plane. Now this particular one is my vertical takeoff and landing version of the FPV that I'm working on, but you can sort of just forget about this because what I'm going to talk about applies to the forward flight FPV plane. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the construction of this plane. Now, if you're building this plane out of the lighter Dollar Tree foam board, you can do this mod. Of course, well, pretty much any material you're using, you can do this mod. The original one, I had barbecue skewers right here, going back and forth on the boom. But if you build it this way, you don't need to have those barbecue skewers there, and it's actually going to be stiffer and stronger than the original way that I had you building it. And all this entails doing is building these what I might call long triangle pieces right here. So as you can see, the original plans had a piece that started out like this, was about this wide, and it tapered down to a point right about here. Okay, so it didn't add a whole lot of strength any further back than that. And so that's why I had you guys putting a barbecue skewer that started up about here and went back on the boom. Okay, so if you build this triangle piece that starts here like the original design, but goes all the way back and actually like a finger sort of goes around the sides of the vertical stabilizers on the tail, that's going to make it nice and rigid. I mean, this thing is very rigid and very tough, a lot tougher than the original design. So that's the first tip. The other one is go ahead and make the rudders even taller. Okay, the original design was kind of based off my sport trainer, so I more or less just copied exactly the rudders that I had on the sport trainer. And they do work, but this plane would have a tendency to sort of slide out, basically doing an uncoordinated turn, and that's not desirable. So if you want a little bit more yaw stability on the plane, just add about this much. I mean, you're looking at about 3 inches or so, 2 inches more vertical on the tails, okay? And it's pretty easy to do. If you've already built the plane, it's very easy to just cut out another loop there or arch and glue it right on top. Okay, so that's the two things you can do on the first version of my FPV plane. Now, if you're working on the FPV version 3, I've seen a little bit of traffic on my forum, as well as been getting a couple emails from guys saying they're having problems when they launch this plane. It wants to nose over and go right into the ground. Now, there's two things that are kind of causing this. One could be bad launching procedure, okay? I've seen some people where they just don't use enough throttle when they're launching. They have it at like, a little above quarter throttle or half throttle. It's not going the motor's not going very strong, and they just give it kind of a delicate toss. And as soon as they take their hands off the plane, then they try to go real quick down to their transmitter, grab those controls, give it more throttle, and take off. Now, I think the reason people are doing this is because they're worried about torque roll. On this plane, you don't really have to worry about that too much. It's got a wide enough wingspan, and the motor's not too torquey that it's not going to roll the plane over on takeoff. So my procedure is to use about 3/4 throttle, and I'm launching this plane with a nice firm toss with it nose up about 45 degrees. Okay, and sometimes I even put in a couple clicks of up trim on the elevator. So that way I've got all the things working for me. This plane wants to nose up and keep going up into the air as I launch it. Okay. And a nice firm toss too. This plane has a really easy place to hold it, right down here on this battery tray. Just make sure you're not pinching the battery door if you put that in there. But other than that, you can pretty much grab it right on the center of gravity, which is a perfect place to grab a plane. You can put a finger back here a little bit and really get a good grip to launch this plane, okay? You don't have to run, just make sure you're facing into the wind, give a nice firm toss. Now, the second reason that this plane has had a little bit of difficulty with this is that the way the plans showed you originally to mount the motor was with this motor mount that was sticking up here and was actually on top of the upper wing, okay? And what that would do is put the line of thrust way up here, above the weight of the battery. It was above the center of lift of the wings, and what that does is when you give it full throttle, it's trying to push the plane down. You got to think of your basic physics equation here. You've got a lever arm sticking up this high, and it's pushing the plane from up here, and it noses it down. And especially when there's no airspeed, if a guy was giving it a very light, gentle toss on a launch, there's no wind going over the wings to try and keep them up for them to do their job of keeping the nose up on the plane. Okay. Even once you did get it launched, as you're flying around and you would give it full throttle or higher power settings, you would have to keep some up elevator in there just to keep it, flying straight and level. And I didn't like that. I wanted it to fly nice and straighter, even more, straighter and true. So what I did is I went ahead and filled back in that hole on the original plans where the propeller would swing through. I went ahead and just lopped off my motor mount here. It's a nice thing about working with foam board. It's very easy to make modifications like this. And then I had to cut holes in a hole further back so the propeller could swing through the fuselage here. And this is a little bit of surgery on the plane, so it does take a little bit of doing, but the benefits are way worth it. So anyway, let me grab my ruler here. And basically what we're doing is moving the mounting location of the motor back. So if I go from where the motor mount was, we're moving it back about 5.5 inches, okay? So where the X mount bolted on to the flat wooden part of your motor mount here, okay? You said it's about 5.5, right? Move around here. Yeah, it's about 5.5 inches. So we're moving the motor 5.5 inches back, and we're also moving it down. So if you look here, the motor, instead of sticking up here, it's now actually, the line of thrust is right in line with the low point on the upper wing, okay? So that puts it down, and now I've pretty much negated any sort of nose down tendency that I have by moving that motor lower. Now again, it does take a little bit of surgery to do this. The easiest way is to cut off the whole rudder of your plane. You're going to have to move it back a little bit. You're going to have to cut a hole in it here. You're going to have to cut a hole in the upper wing here. And you're also going to have to cut a hole in the lower wing here to get the prop to just barely swing through. Now it doesn't really stick down that much, but it's just a little bit. And the cool thing with this is that even though the propeller sticks down below the upper wing, or excuse me, the lower wing, it still has enough clearance. So when this plane comes in for a landing at the high angle of attack and scrapes the ground a little bit, the prop hardly ever touches. So you still have that prop nice and protected for coming in on landings. It's fairly protected from your hand, so when you're launching it and you're grabbing it here, it's provided you don't stick your hand up here, you shouldn't cut your hand. The only other thing you got to do is make sure to wrap a little bit of tape around the sort of the trailing edge of this hole right here, and also the leading edge of this hole, or this part of the hole here, because you will have a couple layers of foam and it creates kind of like a little air pocket, and you don't want the propeller just shoving air into a dead space there. It would just sort of reduce the efficiency of your propeller. So cut the holes, move the motor back and down, and you have to relocate the rudder. And now the rudder is sticking out a little bit behind the actual fuselage. The only time that this might cause any problem is if you're putting it in your car and this is sticking out further, but you can just sort of gently fold over your rudder like that, and it gets you almost to level with the back of the plane. So the plane is going to fly a lot more straight and true at higher throttle settings. The other benefit to this is that since the line of thrust is further down and not trying to push the plane down, excuse me, the nose of the plane down when it's under power, that enables you to have lower power settings and use a little more thrust vectoring on the elevators, on the quad elevons here, so that you can come in nice and slow at those high angles of attack, which means equates to slower landing speeds. So there's a couple tips if you're making the FPV version 1 or the FPV version 2. I highly recommend those. I really recommend what I'm saying here on the FPV version 3. I think it's going to make it a lot easier for you guys who are new pilots. This is actually a good plane for beginners to get that center line of thrust down, so this thing just wants to take off nice and straight. So if you have any more questions, please join my forum. You can go to MikeysRC.com, click on the forum Join Now link, and it'll take you right to my forum. It's free to join, of course, and there's a bunch of guys that are always on there willing to help out. So anyway, I hope you guys have fun flying these planes, and I'll see you later.